Hello and welcome to another edition of CiviCast, a series of podcasts from the National Civic Impact Accelerator Programme funded by Research England. On this episode, we'll be talking about community organising in the context of the Civic University Agenda, and I'm delighted to be joined today by three representatives from Citizens UK. That's Claire Rodgerson from Tyne Wear Citizens, Paulina Tamborrel from South London Citizens, and Fiona Meldrum from Cardiff Citizens for a tale of three cities and a tale of university engagement and community action in these three cities. So hello everyone, and Claire, please could you start off by introducing yourself, please?
Hi, thank you for having us on your podcast today. It's really great to be here with you and colleagues talking about such an important issue. I'm Claire Rodgerson. I'm a senior organiser in Tyne Wear Citizens. I spend a day and a half a week embedded in Newcastle University, supporting them with their civic agenda and embedding organising kind of into that and their social and environmental justice work.
Thank you. And Fiona, please.
Hi, I'm Fiona Meldrum. I'm a senior organiser with Citizens Cymru Wales, particularly working with our Cardiff Citizens Alliance. And as part of that work, I work very closely with Cardiff University, who are a strategic partner of ours, and also Cardiff Business School.
Thank you very much, Fiona. And Paulina.
Hi, Joan. My name is Paulina and I'm based in London. I'm a lead organiser in Citizens, currently heading our migration and refugee organising. But for about 5 years, I was working with universities in London on all sorts of campaigns. So very happy to be here and share a little bit about that.
Thanks so much, Paulina. So each of you, in your capacities as community organisers, you work closely with universities, is that right? Could you start by telling us how that came about? Claire, could I start with you?
Yeah, so I've been organising for about 5 years now, and throughout that time, Newcastle University have been one of our strategic partners, having founded the chapter prior to that, and I can explain that language as we kind of go on into today's session. But yeah, I've worked alongside Newcastle University through all of that time, supporting them to campaign with civil society organisations across the region, from trade union, faith, charity, and other parts of the education sector, and also helping them to organise in the institution as well. So, for example, we've run the Real Living Wage campaign successfully in the university, and so I've worked with academics in that space all the way along to students, cleaners, security guards, gardeners, so pretty much across the piece, really. And in Tyne Wear Citizens more broadly, we also have 3 students' unions in membership, who are experimenting with organising as a way to support their student activism. And that's Sunderland, Newcastle and Durham Students' Union.
Great, thank you. Fiona, and your work with universities, please tell us a bit about that.
Sure. So I've been organising for about 5 years myself, but the relationship with Cardiff University and Cardiff Business School goes back a bit further in terms of Citizens Wales. I mean, a university, when we talk about building civil society alliances and chapters, a university is always good to have as part of your alliance, being a big civic actor in a particular geographic location. But as is the case with, I think, a few universities that we have as part of our membership across the UK, Cardiff University actually started out as a target for one of our campaigns. So it was a campaign very much led by the cleaners at Cardiff University, who at that time were not being paid a real living wage. And so we campaigned on that with a kind of budding alliance. And the university agreed to become a living wage employer, but also it really solidified our relationship with them in terms of them coming on board as a strategic partner for the alliance and us starting to build from there. Since then, we have worked closely with them on other living wage campaigns. We're very lucky that Cardiff Business School has several leading academics on the living wage who we work quite closely with, but also in embedding it kind of into the culture of the university, particularly in the business school, where we now teach a mandatory business management first year subject module called Society and Economy. But also across other parts of the university, including the School of History, Archaeology and Religion, and hopefully soon the School of Politics.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Paulina.
Thank you, Joan. I think for today, I might prioritise the organising that we've done with King's College London, that is based, sprinkled all over London, but really has been very active in South London citizens. And perhaps unlike some of the stories that Fiona will share, King's College didn't necessarily start as a target, but it was a small part of King's College London, the social mobility department, that begun organising and kind of set the example and the tone for the rest of the university. And we've done incredible campaigns, both national around migration and citizenship fees, and very kind of deep student leadership development internally and everything in between. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing some of the things that we've done and learned with King's College.
Great stuff. Thank you, Paulina. So before we go any further, and for the benefit of listeners who may be new to this, could one of you please tell us, what do we mean by community organising?
I'm happy to start it, relying on Fiona and Claire adding other elements to it. There's a lot that we can say about organising. We did not invent it, but we do like to think that we've developed a really successful practice here in the UK. We've been doing it for over 30 years as an organisation. And at the heart of it, what it is bringing people together so that they can achieve more than what they could achieve on their own. Now, that's organising as a whole, but the way that Citizens UK does it is that we do it through institutions, and we do it based on geographical areas. So we look at a local area, a city, a region, and we engage with institutions in that area and invite them to work together and think about what could they achieve together that they couldn't achieve on their own. So across the UK, we've got over 500 institutions that have chosen to come together and achieve all sorts of wonderful things to create a better United Kingdom. And I think I might stop there and look to Fiona and Claire and see if they want to add anything.
Thank you, Paulina. I guess for me, what sets us apart from other forms of alliance or network where people are coming together is that we focus on power. We say that we're able to achieve more than the sum of our parts together because we are building power. Power being the ability to act, organising in a space that has a peppered political history, where at times people have felt maybe able to organise in their workplace, but that kind of went with the decline of industry here. And there's lots of people trying to do lots of good things, but often in silos. Churches, mosques, synagogues will be doing wonderful work. Charities will be doing wonderful work, but they often feel the restraint of what they can achieve on their own, specifically because of the lack of power or the ability to act. So we train our members and the people, we call them leaders. We're kind of steeped in jargon and community organising. But as Paulina says, it has a long history, and it is a methodology that can be useful to create change. Yeah, support and develop and train leaders in order to be comfortable with power, be comfortable about claiming it, be comfortable about claiming it in alliance with others, and to understand how it works around us in order to affect change. Fiona, do you want to add anything?
I think just to touch on what we campaign on, because I can see it here. So we don't decide the issues that we campaign on as community organisers. They are decided by alliances, which means that the issues that we campaign on could look very different if it's London versus Birmingham versus Manchester versus Newcastle versus Cardiff. And that actually the building of these broad-based alliances and the campaigning of issues allows people to more fully participate in democracy. I think that's another part of it, is that what we're allowing people to do is to participate collectively in the democratic process, much more than just voting, but doing that in an everyday way in their institutions by coming together in their communities.
Fiona, if I could ask you, could you tell us a bit more about the different chapters of Citizens UK that are based around the country, please?
Yeah, sure. So we are in many places across the UK. We have 17 formally formed chapters, and those are in everywhere from London to Birmingham to Newcastle to Manchester, Brighton, Somerset, Wales, and many places in between. And what the chapter will look like in each place is a bit different. It will depend on the geography and the demographics of that particular area, but broadly they are all alliances that have a number of civil society organisations that are members of that alliance, and that essentially that own that broad-based organisation and drive it forward.
Great, thank you, Fiona. I'd like to ask you how or a bit more, if you could tell me a bit more, please, about how universities can work with Citizens UK and how they do work with you in your sort of daily work at a chapter. So would anyone like to go first on that one? Claire Rodgerson.
Yeah, thank you. So universities are massive in their local areas, aren't they? They're anchor institutions, permanent structures where there's lots of people coming together for various reasons, work, study, so on and so forth. And there's lots of expertise held within them and also lots of willing to do good, mission statements that are tied to social justice, social purpose, social responsibility. Like the university that I work in, most Newcastle have social and environmental justice running through as a core value. So they're really important within our cities and our regions. And I think, although do lots of wonderful partnership work, often struggle to think, how can we be part of long-term civil alliances? I think that the difference between partnership and alliance is an interesting dynamic that we can explore if you like. People want to contribute their research expertise, their people power to local campaigns, but don't necessarily know how to do it in a permanent way. So Citizens, through those establishments of the permanent organisations that Fiona described, can help them do it. So across the country, we've got 26 higher education institutions in membership, and their work takes multiple forms. So that might be, as Fiona mentioned, embedding community organising into the curriculum. Fiona's working in the business school. I work with the School of Geography most closely in Newcastle University, and we have kind of formal teaching, training, but also placement students from the modules we teach. They might engage through leadership or civic engagement programs. Paulina can maybe say a little bit more about that. But in Newcastle, for example, we've recently worked with the Student Advisory Board, who are looking at challenging the awarding gap between Black home students and their counterparts in the School of Engineering. And we've been working with students so that they can lead that work using community organising methodology. And they also might be involved through research and knowledge exchange-led partnerships. So partnering on bids where research feeds into campaigns or we can feed into research, vice versa. So universities might engage in one of those elements, or with Newcastle and other bigger partnerships like King's, we've got people engaging at all different levels.
If I could ask a quick follow-up question on that, I guess it depends on the particular university you're working with. But do you find any similarities in roles within universities, in the people that you're talking to regularly? Is there like a similar structure for each university, like specific people doing sort of civic and community-based work, or does it vary? What's been your experience?
So partnerships often begin with an individual like that. So in Newcastle, it was Professor Liz Todd. She actually went and saw some of the activity of Citizens UK around a general election a long time ago now, and there was 5,000 people in the Copper Box in London, with community leaders putting their asks to prime ministerial candidates. And she noticed that the Northeast wasn't present in that space. So was really inspired, but really confused also as to why our voices weren't there. So Liz was one of those people that you described. She came back and said, started asking the questions in the region, but also in the university. Why don't we have this here? Who else could be involved? And Citizens UK doesn't go to a place and say, you need some social justice, let us help you. Our chapters start with individuals like that, exploring how it might be beneficial to the area and how they can get involved. So Liz was absolutely crucial to founding Tyne Wear Citizens. The university came in, helping with seed funding for an initial 2 years, along with 2 Church of England dioceses, a Roman Catholic diocese, and Northumbria area Quakers, put in seed funding to see if other people wanted this form of social justice. Lo and behold, people did. Leadership development, strengthening civil societies, making change. People do want that. And it kind of went from there in the northeast. But it isn't just Liz involved now. I mean, it would never probably have lasted so long if it had remained just with one person. So now overseeing my embedded role is the Pro Vice Chancellor for Engagement and Place, Jane Robinson, and Alison Shaw, who's a Professor of Practice, overseeing the Access Participation Plan, and along with Liz. And there are many, many more people across the university involved. We have a kind of core team of people who are interested in this work coming together, and that includes the law school, the business school, cleaners, security guards, students, who are all interested in accessing this form of creating change together. And they all can access the Alliance equally. We put on local training several times a year that they can come to, but we have a accredited training program nationally through Newman University that all of those people are able to access. So we say we're a broad-based alliance, broad in the types of civil society organisations that can be involved, as I listed earlier. But within those institutions, we're broad in that we don't just want this work to sit with positional leaders, but we want everybody to have equal access.
Yeah. One of the things that's really exciting about our work with universities, I think it's quite refreshing, the setting or the context in which universities are applying their strength and their talents and their skills and their people. So the way that they organize is that, as Claire mentioned, they joined an alliance with civil society organizations. So faith communities, TRAs, third sector organizations, to build that power to win change. So to give you a little bit of an example, in South London, King's College London and the Widening Participation Department worked very closely with the Latin American community, which is not a community that they had engaged with before through their research or through their parental programs. And what's exciting about this work is that they can support organizations like the Latin American community in winning campaigns. And they did that in loads of Latin American recognition campaigns with the ONS, with NUS, within King's themselves. But what's really exciting is that the Latin American community also transformed King's College London. So King's College London was the first university to recognize Latin Americans as an ethnicity. So today, Latin American students are recognized as a minority. They can access bursaries, there's special widening participation and social mobility programs, which is quite a unique way of transforming both communities and the local context and the institution themselves.
Perhaps we could turn to universities that you work with in your areas. So how do these relationships get started, and what's the work that you're doing now? If I could start with you first, Fiona, please.
So with Cardiff Business School, we already had a relationship with Cardiff University, but what was really helpful was that Cardiff Business School started a public value strategy, first public value business school in the world. And at the same time, or about a year later, they had a new dean, Rachel Ashworth. And Rachel Ashworth was really committed to how they were going to actually make that public value strategy tangible. She had been involved in some of our earlier living wage work, as had 3 academics at Cardiff Business School, which gave us a really good foundation for building that relationship. And I think that's really crucial here, is that it can be anyone within a university who has the commitment to this that we engage with, but it really helps when it ties directly into the mission and vision of the organisation. So the public value strategy of Cardiff Business School, now I know a lot of universities now have that. I think the struggle they had was, how do we make this tangible for our student body? So for all of the students that are part of Cardiff Business School, how do we make sure that they too are living the public value strategy? And we were already doing living wage research, but what really helped was that commitment, because we then said, well, why don't we build it into the curriculum? As a start point, why don't we build this into the curriculum? We co-designed a module with their academics and made that a mandatory first year module for their business management students, which is about 300 students a year. And that is co-delivered by organisers from Citizens Cymru Wales and their teaching staff, led by 2 academics. And essentially what it allowed us to do was not only train large numbers of students in community organising, but begin to embed community organising as a method that was intrinsic to the public value strategy of the business school. Over the 5 years that we've been teaching that module, not only have we allowed all of the students studying business management to have an experience of public value by looking at what economic and social issues in their community in Cardiff that they can solve collectively with the community. But it also has allowed us to go deeper into the business school and start building relationships with other academics in other areas who want to do the same thing.
That sounds great, Fiona. So if only we could get that into every university course, that was great. Was there any pushback from the sort of the business side, or students or academics maybe thinking, why am I learning about community organising on a business course? I mean, I can understand the economic benefit. Is that kind of how it was used as a sort of persuasive argument in that way?
It's a really good question. And I think absolutely, I'd be lying if I said there was no pushback from business management students who are coming into a business school thinking, I want to be a CEO or an entrepreneur.
Right.
And we're teaching them community organising. But I think, one, the relevance to what they're teaching can't be understated. So a lot of the campaigns we work on are about creating social and economic impact. If you think about the living wage campaign, that is a campaign that has a massive economic impact, not only on the people whose wages we uplift, but also on the communities and the employers who uplift those wages. And I think it's really crucial to bring that into places like business schools, to have the students learning how society and the economy interact and the interplay between them. So I think that's part of it. And I think actually, in some ways, over the 5 years, we have seen more and more appetite from business school students to understand this. One is because they themselves are now recognizing there are economic factors beyond their control that are affecting their life, like the cost of living crisis, like university tuition fees, like the period during the pandemic where they were paying for a university they were not at. But also, and this is how we frame it with them, we are trying to build the leaders of the future. And when you ask students, whether they are politics students or business school students, what kind of leader they want to be in the future, for most of them, they want to be a fair, equitable leader who cares about things like building anti-discrimination laws into employment contracts, like paying people a fair wage, like parental leave. And so I think actually framing it to young people in this way of like, what kind of leader do you want to be, is very useful. But also a key part of our methodology is to develop leaders. Not only for communities, but also for the world. So I see it as being very relevant to that.
Thanks, Fiona. That sounds really interesting. I'm just, while you've been talking, wondering, is there any way to get such a module on every course?
We would love to have this module in every single university in the UK. And takes some commitment from universities themselves, obviously. But the brilliance of it as well is that we are talking about co-delivering this. This isn't just about us coming in and saying, here's our method and here's the way we see the world. The idea is that together with universities, we're kind of co-designing a module that fits with their individual mission or vision. So not all business schools are public value, not all universities have that exact mission. But I think what we're seeing is a massive increase in universities having a civic mission. And I think what we do really well is come in and co-design ways that we can make that live in their organisation.
Great. Thanks, Fiona. Paulina, do you want to tell us a bit about how your relationships with universities in your area at King's College, right? How they started?
Yeah, the relationship with King's College goes way back before my time with them. But in the beginning, King's College London, I think, saw Citizens UK as a charitable donation. And it was really important, and they paid membership dues, and every so often they would support campaigns, and that was really appreciated. But it wasn't really until Widening Participation Department, led by Anne-Marie Canning, decided to do organising themselves, not only support other people to do the organising, but actually, get in the arena, is what we call it, that things really started to grow and flourish. And how that happened really was Anne-Marie and King's College London facing this challenge of engaging parents. And they had tried everything, with loads of budget over multiple years, and parents were just not engaging in these widening participation programs. And it was applying the methodology of organising, of putting people before program, of shaping the program only after you asked people what they needed and what they cared about, that things started to shift. Now, that was what led to Parent Power, which is now a nationwide organising project that has taken root in multiple universities across the country, now led by the Brilliant Club, doing some really, really exciting organising. But how that started was a little bit with the leap of faith of Anne-Marie Canning being a little bit nervous, I would say, in the beginning of like, what's going to happen? What are the parents going to be doing? And the local organiser, James Asfa, being like, I don't know. You know what they want to be doing. This program will shape itself once we start listening to parents. And I think it's that kind of very courageous leadership from Anne-Marie Canning and the Widening Participation Department that allowed us to kind of test this model of organising in a university context and prove to other departments that actually if you put people before a program, if you listen, if you develop leadership, if you build relationships, amazing things can happen. And that really, really successful Parent Power project then became a little bit of a blueprint for other departments with other priorities to take a chance and take that leap of faith on a methodology that is really exciting, but sometimes a little bit uncertainty. I should also give a quick shout out to Jonathan Grant that called it permission to dance, that allowed other people to engage in this process. And it was really through the years, through the amazing leadership of Michael Bennett, Louis Goff, that we started to see projects not only in widening participation, but in student success, in different academic faculties. And it was really, really fantastic. I think now we have over 27 programs running. They've hired a community organizer to do organising around mental health. They've started parental programs in multiple languages, following the needs of the local people. They started and won national campaigns on citizenship fees and migration, and they've really, really become a backbone to our organising, not only locally in South London, but nationally in multiple ways.
Can I just echo what Paulina says there about courageous leadership? I think that is a really crucial point you raise. And as you were speaking, I'm thinking about Professor Julie Sanders, who was the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Newcastle University. I mentioned the Living Wage campaign, and it really took courage to allow organising to go into that space from the university perspective. They were a strategic partner, we were working with them in lots of spaces, and they knew we were campaigning on the living wage in the region, but hadn't yet done it themselves. And I think the traditional way of working, that would be a kind of task and finish group, and then senior leadership looking at it, maybe looking at results of staff surveys, etc. That would have been the easy thing to do. What was the more difficult and courageous thing to do was say, well, actually, staff surveys aren't necessarily telling us the full picture of how people experience this place. So we kind of got the permission to go out and do this listening campaign, and lots of university staff and students put their time into it. And really what they discovered was a whole host of issues that, including the living wage, but not limited to that a staff survey would have never taught you about. It also, so we could organise around those. Like we had a photography exhibition of professional services staff around campus after people had spoke about respect and recognition, and those issues won't be limited to Newcastle University. That's often the case when there's a huge institution with several layers of hierarchy within it. But also what the staff survey wouldn't have done, that organising allowed the opportunity to do, was develop the leadership of everyday people within the institution. So another Julie was really important in that story, and that's Julie Hunan-Frizzell, who did work in the canteen and now is a security guard. And her being able to use her voice to organise her colleagues, to create change, to know that as a woman from the Northeast, her voice can impact getting a pay rise for all of our colleagues, but then going on to speak in Parliament, to advocate for a real living wage with our parliamentarians. She was speaking at Newcastle Council last week because we're trying to create Newcastle as a living wage city. Julie came and spoke on that platform. None of that would have happened without that courageous leadership and just saying, let's see where this goes. And the third thing that enabled was the relationships between the various parts of the university. So Julie working with Liz Todd, just to kind of name people I already have, as equals, as partners. They both co-chair, along with two students, that core team of organisers within the university that I mentioned earlier. And I don't think, and this isn't just from me, but anecdotally from others in the university, that there is another space where people from such a broad scope across the institution work together as equals. And I think that's a real benefit to what we bring and how these relationships can grow. To the extent that, I mean, that's what led to my embedded role. People wondered, well, if those relationships can be built in that space around working conditions for professional services staff, what else might be possible using this methodology? And likewise, there's multiple different projects came from that, some of which I've mentioned already, but then also having university staff and students in our campaigns, just working alongside people to increase hate crime protections in the region, try and advocate for the change of hate crime laws by the Law Commission to Newcastle University. The possibilities are endless, but that courage to dance.
That courage to dance that you mentioned before, or permission to dance, is very interesting and a good phrase. Lots of things I'd like to follow up on, please. But one is civic leadership. We touched, or you've all, I think, talked around the importance of leadership. So how can we support university leaders' development and engagement with local issues? And what impact can this have on the wider community? Thanks, Fiona.
I think and we've touched on this, I think one of the key principles in community organising is around collective leadership, shared equal leadership. So we are not in the business of charity or advocacy. We want shared leadership. And as Claire has very well explained, that idea of people sitting at the same level. So we're talking about getting people a seat at the table to be part of the decision-making process on issues that affect their lives. And what we want is kind of people sitting equally at that table. And I think that's one of the real opportunities for universities, is to bring their leadership to sit at a table equally with those from the community. I think often, engagement can mean outreach and doing surveys or inviting people to a singular meeting. But our method is about a sustainable, continued collective leadership. And I think what that allows for is not only deeper relationships to build, but deeper work. So, for example, the academic who leads on a lot of our work at the business school, Dr. Deborah Hahn, is a living wage researcher. That's her area of expertise. She helps co-lead the module that we deliver, but she also co-chairs our Fair Work Action team with a young man called Niroshan Siddharthan, who runs a CIC called Fair Jobs, which is about tackling unemployment and employment inequality across Cardiff's Southern Arc. And as much as they lead that team, they develop strategies for overcoming unemployment issues and a lot of our living wage campaigning across the city. It has also allowed them to build a relationship where they are innovating together. So the Cardiff Business School teach a Help to Grow business program. And so Nurashin is continually funneling people into that program. And then people that are funneled into that program often end up leading some of the solutions to the campaigns we're working on. So, for example, at the moment, we have the head of a boxing club in Cardiff who wants to expand his business. He's currently working in getting young people who are involved with the boxing club into security jobs across Cardiff as a kind of preventative diversionary tactic. He wants to expand that work. So through the relationship with the Cardiff Business School, he is now going on the Help to Grow program. And that piece of work is actually forming a diversionary intervention as part of a bigger youth violence and knife crime campaign that we're working on in the city. Similarly, Nurashin himself, who runs a Community Jobs Compact, has gone on that training and regularly uses people within the business school as kind of mentors, as HR experts. They're building a website. So I think that organic way that has developed is what can come of those relationships that are built through the Alliance and through universities kind of sitting at that table rather than just occasionally inviting people in to their own table.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my next question might lead nicely on from that, Fiona. Paulina, if I could ask you about equitable relationships. So how can universities leverage community organising like Citizens UK would do to build stronger, more equitable relationships between academics, students and the wider community?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? And I think that's one of the huge gifts that community organising can give higher education institutions that historically have had a tremendous imbalance of power in comparison to the communities in which they are based. So what organising can do is frame those relationships and those interactions in a very different way. Usually what we see is higher education institutions, for very good reason, have their own agenda to engage with communities. And if local communities fit within that agenda, that's fantastic. If not, then that's too bad. If parents want to be engaged in a particular way that's convenient for the university, that's great. And if not, they're excluded. That's what we've seen historically. And what organising can do, and sorry if that was a bit reductive, I know there's a lot of great work happening other than organising, but what community organising can do is press pause on the agenda. That again can be a very legitimate and incredibly valuable agenda, but we press pause on that agenda and we prioritise relationship. And when you prioritise relationship and the interests of both parties, not just the academic, not just the young person, not just, the widening participation officer, not just the parent, then what can come out is a common agenda, a common self-interest. And through training and our methodology and conversations, people begin to see that actually if you address both interests, sometimes it's not just only two parties, but 8, 15, that if you address all of those common interests, what can come out is much stronger. So to give you an example with King's College London, the Widening Participation Department, currently led by Michael Bennett, had a real interest in a social mobility strategy for Lambeth. Not traditional, but very, an expected agenda for a widening participation department. But instead of going about it in the usual way, they decided to use a community organising methodology. So the social mobility strategy actually became the Building Better Futures campaign. Now not only led by King's College London, but led by King's College London, local churches and faith institutions, and local schools. So then you had a head teacher of an Islamic primary school, an EAL teacher from a predominantly Latin American primary, working with King's College London as equals to make sure that young people in the local area could flourish. Now that is a completely different relationship than the almighty powerful university coming into the local community and the local community kind of leeching for dear life to those that have power. Because that is not pleasant either for communities, and it's also not pleasant for universities. So in that way, hopefully that example kind of can show that when you put kind of like a one-party agenda in pause and prioritize relationships, then incredible things can happen. And the Building Better Futures campaign, I won't go on about it for too long, but has been an incredible force in shifting the future for young people in Lambeth.
Thank you very much, Paulina. That's great. Claire, I'll throw a question at you, if that's okay. I know we've talked, or you've talked, all of us have talked a bit about the living wage earlier on today. So on the sort of topic of social justice and that kind of work, how can universities demonstrate their commitment to social justice through partnerships with local organisations and businesses?
Thank you. I mean, I'll just use the living wage as the example, seems you opened with that. I mean, the first thing they can do is accredit as a real living wage employer. We've spoke about the benefits to people, but also the economy through living wage accreditation. And at Sunderland Uni, when we were asking them to accredit, the branch secretary of Unison in the University of Sunderland did some stats on how many of the lower paid workers lived in the local area, and therefore their spending power would increase and contribute to the local area rather than kind of maybe an area where more academics may live. Not mean to totally stereotype. So accredit, contribute your people, contribute to your local economy. But flashing back over the River Wear and the River Tyne to Newcastle, they've took it that step further. Jane Robinson, the Pro Vice Chancellor for Engagement of Place, I mentioned earlier, has done a great job of advocating with other positional leaders in the city, encouraging them to accredit and to make our region known for decent pay rather than historically being known for terrible pay, for want of a better word. Jane works in our alliance in that way, using the position she has, and we've seen the benefit of that through recent accreditations in Newcastle. So it's doing it, and then it's how you act as an advocate in that space, and jumping even further away, and then looking at what Cardiff Business School are doing as a model. Like, how can you use their research expertise within the institution to foster the environment for better wages? And that example could be transferred to lots of different subjects. So I mentioned hate crime earlier. We've had researchers from the university standing on platforms at public action, advocating for change for public transport providers. But we've also had an ex-dean of social justice sitting in a local mosque using his research to sit alongside Muslim women who were asking the police to take their concerns more seriously. So I think it's multifaceted.
Thank you, Claire. I'm coming to the end of my questions for you. So let's say I live in a town or a city that doesn't yet have a Citizens UK chapter. What can I do to get involved or to help create one?
If you are in a place that does not have a Citizens UK chapter, there is a lot to be done. The first step, I think, would be to just reach out to somewhere at Citizens UK. It's quite easy to go on our website. We have a fantastic comms team that, depending on where you are, they will link you up to the right person so that we can have a conversation. But other than that, kind of very practical thing to do to reach out to have a conversation and share your interest in this work. Usually, universities can be really fantastic members of sponsoring committees. Citizens UK doesn't necessarily have an agenda of being all over the country. That's what we would like. But ultimately, we are a very small staff team, and it is people across the country that make this work come to life. So what I would encourage people to do that are thinking about this would be, well, first reach out for a conversation, but then also start looking around in a university of who could you bring along in this journey, because alone we don't get very far. And then also look beyond your university. What other institutions locally need to be involved? If your city, if your region was going to be different, who would need to be part of that effort? So I think that's quite big thinking, doing a little bit of power analysis and fishing for hope around your local region. And then a very practical note of reaching out to us for a conversation.
Thanks, Paulina. And if I was in a town or a city, or I'm at a university that already has a Citizens UK chapter, is it fair to assume that my university probably already is connected up with you? Or might there be something that I could do as a staff member at university to kind of start to facilitate that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. We don't necessarily have a university as part of every chapter, I think. And not all universities in a particular area are part of those chapters. And look, they don't need to be, but universities are really key civic actors. And we are always interested, I think, in talking to universities who want to further their own civic agendas. So I think if organising as a methodology, as I think Claire said at the start, or Paulina, we do not own the methodology of community organising. We are not the only people that do it, even in the UK. What we want to see is more civic organisations wanting to employ this methodology within their organisation. So that's our hope. But if people are interested in learning more about community organising and how they can bring it into their organisation, there will be someone in a chapter within your city or nearby who would always be willing to have a chat.
Great. Claire, I was really interested in, you talked about your embedded role, and what I'm hearing working in sort of the Civic University space is there seems to be a lot of benefit of people from different organisations being embedded in a cooperative organisation. For example, people in local government working in a university. Do you want to tell us about your experience and what benefit you found from that, please?
Yeah, it's invaluable for our work as Tyne Wear Citizens, helping navigate such a huge institution as Newcastle University and tie in people's interests together with those out in the wider civic space. We aren't the only people with that sort of relationship, though. I think Kings were the start, correct me if I'm wrong, Paulina, and we were kind of influenced by them, but putting a very Newcastle Northeast slant on it. I think there's mutual benefit in having focused time to work with such a huge institution and find out where the spaces of mutual benefit are. I hope the relationship will go on for a long time because there's a lot of work to do, bearing in mind the university's strategic focus on social and environmental justice. So next year, we're looking at doing more work with the business school, supporting the next phase of the access and participation plan, doing more teaching, working with more students. So the possibilities are endless, really. And I guess the embedded role just gives me more time to find out what those opportunities might be, who we can work alongside.
Thank you. So, to sort of round up our conversation today, how can people get involved in the work of Citizens UK, and what's like your final message to our listeners? Shall I start with you, Fiona?
I think it's really exciting that we're seeing this movement grow around civic universities. And I think it's really exciting that universities are really starting to consider themselves and how they play as civic actors. I think the benefit of Citizens UK and our community organising method is that it's fit for purpose. So whatever your civic engagement strategy, there will be a way that I think community organising can help facilitate that, hopefully make it easier and more quickly allow you to build those relationships in the community through the existing alliance that allows you to kind of fully realise the potential of that civic engagement strategy.
Thanks, Fiona. Claire, shall I come to you next? What's your final word to our listeners today?
Thank you. I mean, let's face it, the country can feel like it's in a bit of a mess, can't it? And there's communities, individuals, institutions are suffering. And, community organising is one of the only things I've done in my career. And, I did lots of things before this. It's one of the only things I've done in my career where we can actually create change together. We know what we've changed in the Northeast, but we also know the relationships we've built that will sustain themselves in a country and a world that can often feel divided. So I would say if you're interested in any of those ideas, structural change, interpersonal relationships, sustained alliances, you should get involved. We've got a website, citizensuk.org, that lists our chapters and has a page on higher education work. You can find out what's in your local area or explore how you might develop it from there. We also, through our academic in residence, Tim Hall, we've started a program of annual HAI conferences. The next one, I'm pleased to say, will be in Newcastle. We're going to be dragging everyone up to the Northeast. I'm really excited to showcase the work there, but also our region and work with others to have that knowledge exchange. It's going to be on the 5th of June, and it is about higher education working in the space of social justice. So please do get in touch if you're interested in that. Even if you're not in relationship with Citizens UK right now, but you think you might want to be, it's a really good place to come and get a full eagle-eyed view of what we're doing. So please do come, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Great stuff, Claire. Thank you. That sounds really interesting. If I come to you, Paulina, for your final word to our listeners today, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for the conversation. I think I won't hammer in more about the role of universities that, they've played historically and that they can play now, because I feel like my colleagues have done that, and probably listeners know about the role and the potential and the power of universities in depth. I think my last message to listeners would be that every single case study, every single relationship that we've had with universities, every single campaign that universities have been part of that have changed people's lives, started because someone in these universities chose to get involved. Whether you call it part of your vocation, part of your civic leadership role, part of having permission to dance, however you want to call it, these things start with individuals taking action and reaching out, either across the university or beyond the walls of the university, to work with other people. So all of these stories feel really, really grand, and part of what we wanted to do today was share what is possible. But if that feels far away, don't be daunted by that, because everything starts with someone, reaching out to someone else. So I'll end with that, John.
Thanks so much, Paulina. So thank you very much to Claire, Fiona and Paulina from Citizens UK for talking to me today, and special thanks to Tim Hall at Citizens UK for all his help to set up our conversation today. You can find out more about Citizens UK and the National Civic Impact Accelerator in the text accompanying this podcast. We'll be back with another CiviCast episode very soon. Thank you to you for listening, and thank you to Claire Rodgerson from Tyne Wear Citizens.
Thanks, John.
To Fiona Meldrum from Cardiff Citizens.
Diolch, thank you, John.
And Paulina Tamborrel from South London Citizens.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you all, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.